Oklahoma law says Michael Bever, who was 16 during his family's murder, is an adult in the eyes of the law.
What happens when kids trade in their backpacks for prison jumpsuits? Life sentences, usually reserved for the most ruthless criminals, have been handed to kids who did the unthinkable. From creepy confessions to courtroom meltdowns, today we'll uncover how these young offenders face their fate behind bars. Here are the 20 most dangerous young criminals reacting to life in prison. Number 20. Dexter Johnson. In 2006, Dexter Johnson and his gang's brutal crime spree left 2 young lives shattered. After carjacking 23-year-old Maria Aparicio and her boyfriend, 17-year-old Hugo, Johnson's gang took the couple to a secluded area where their nightmare began. The perpetrators forced themselves on Maria, and both victims lost their lives due to the use of a firearm. Now, it wasn't long before Aparicio's stolen credit card led police straight to Johnson, and the truth was revealed. At his trial, Johnson was convicted of intentional homicide and sentenced to death. When the sentence was read aloud, though, his reaction was one of complete shock. He couldn't stand up, and chaos erupted in the courtroom. His family was overcome with emotion, and the situation grew so intense that officers had to call for medical help. Just as one shocking verdict fades, though, another story of youth and tragedy emerges from the courtroom. Number 19. Lionel Tate. Imagine being just 14 years old and getting sentenced to life in prison. The story of this teen begins with a heartbreaking accident and the life of a 6-year-old girl, Tiffany Eunuch. On that fateful day, Tiffany's mother left her in the care of a friend, believing she was safe. Meanwhile, Lionel, imitating violent wrestling moves he'd seen on TV, took things too far. Moments later, he rushed downstairs in a panic, claiming Tiffany had stopped breathing, but her injuries were so severe they resembled a fall from 3 stories. It was an accident, but the outcome was tragic. In Florida, intent didn't matter. It was the consequences that counted. When it was time for his life sentence, though, Lionel, surprisingly, showed no emotion.
Where he remained emotionless throughout.
Was he too young to understand the weight of his actions, or was there something deeper? One thing's true. Not all young offenders show the same bewildering calm. In fact, some display chilling indifference, even pride. Number 18. TJ Lane. On February 27, 2012, Chardon High School became the scene of a nightmare that no one could have predicted. At 7:30 a.m., 17-year-old TJ Lane entered the cafeteria and let off rounds on a group of unsuspecting classmates. In seconds, 6 students were rushed to the hospital. 3 of them tragically passed away, and 1 more was left permanently paralyzed, unable to walk again. When he was arrested, the chilling truth came to light. This wasn't an accident. It was a cold, calculated act of violence. During his trial, Lane's lack of remorse was shocking. In fact, he seemed almost proud of what he had done.
My family will move on, not you.
On March 19, 2013, Lane was sentenced to 3 life sentences without the possibility of parole. TJ Lane's indifference in court left the families of the victims in disbelief, no doubt. But not all young offenders are so emotionally detached. Number 17. Antonio Barbeau. Sheboygan Falls, Wisconsin was known for its peaceful streets until one fateful night in September 2012 when everything changed. 78-year-old Barbara Olson, a beloved grandmother, was found lifeless in her garage. At first, it seemed like an accident, but the truth was far more chilling. Antonio Barbeau, her own great-grandson, was behind this horrifying crime. You see, Antonio, along with his friend Nathan Pape, concocted a plan to rob Barbara. But things quickly escalated when Antonio armed himself with a hatchet and told Pape they were going to try to scare her to get money and then use force if needed. That's when the plan took a dark turn. Antonio attacked his grandmother with brutal force, inflicting over 25 devastating injuries. When Antonio faced his moment of reckoning, he tried to show some remorse, but was it too little too late? In the case of Alyssa Bustamante, remorse never came at all, just a chilling void of emotion. Number 16. Alyssa Bustamante. What makes a 15-year-old brutally end the life of a child? That was the haunting question in 2009 when Alyssa Bustamante lured 9-year-old Elizabeth Olton into the woods, struck her many times with the blade, and then disposed of the remains, all just for the thrill of it. The quiet town of St. Martin's, Missouri was shaken to its core. Bustamante, described as a troubled but intelligent child, had even dug the grave days before, proof that this was no impulsive act. During questioning, she coldly admitted she wanted to know what it felt like to end someone's life. Soon, her trial became a media sensation. Some argue that at just 15, she couldn't fully grasp the weight of her crime. Others believed Elizabeth never got a second chance, so why should Bustamante? Ultimately, the judge agreed with the latter, handing down a life sentence with parole eligibility after 35 years. As the verdict was read, Bustamante showed no emotion.
The main reason for accepting the offer was to avoid the absolute certainty of life without parole.
Unlike Alyssa, though, another team mocked the very justice system that tried to hold him accountable. Number 15. Michael Swanson. November 2010. A quiet night in northern Iowa. Gas station clerks Sheila Myers and Vicki Bowman Hall were simply getting through their shifts until a teenage psychopath walked through the door. Michael Swanson demanded cigarettes and cash, then, without hesitation, unalived both women in cold blood using a firearm. Hours later, Swanson wasn't hiding or panicking. He was casually ordering food at McDonald's, his stolen Jeep, ski mask, and weapon all in plain sight. When police arrested him, he barely reacted. In court, he treated the trial like a press tour, smirking at reporters and soaking in the attention. His defense argued insanity, but when given the chance to speak, he didn't deny a thing. The judge ruled him incredibly dangerous and beyond saving. But when the life in prison sentence finally came through, Swanson shocked everyone by laughing in their faces.
It's cold-blooded murder. Cold-blooded murder, young man.
While Swanson's brutal actions unfolded with a disturbing sense of calm, Caleb Sharp's shocking outburst revealed a different kind of deadly impulse. Number 14. Caleb Sharp. At just 15 years old, Sharp gave a cryptic warning to his friends, saying he was about to do something stupid. But no one could have imagined just how horrifying his actions would be. On that fateful day, Sharp stalked the hallways of his school like a predator on the hunt. His first victim, 15-year-old Sam Strahan, bravely tried to stop him, but tragically lost his life as Sharp opened fire directly at him. 3 other students were injured in the madness, but the quick thinking of teachers and staff prevented even more bloodshed. Sharp's actions would haunt the community for years, and it took 5 long years before his case even went to trial. When it did, more than 200 people gave heartbreaking impact statements. Though emotionless in court, Sharp did offer an apology, admitting the unimaginable pain he had caused and acknowledging the PTSD left behind. When the judge sentenced him to 30 years in prison in 2022, Sharp's reaction was subdued. There was no visible shock or remorse, just the same blank stare that had haunted the courtroom throughout his trial.
And most First of all, I am sorry to Amy and Emily for taking Sam from them. I know these are just words.
As Caleb Sharp's case sent shockwaves through Spokane, the chilling story of Robert and Michael Bever takes us into a different realm of horror. Number 13. Robert and Michael Bever. On July 22, 2015, a chilling 911 call from 12-year-old Daniel Bever would unravel a nightmare in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. Desperate and terrified, Daniel called 911, warning that his family was under attack. But before he could say more, the line went dead. When police arrived, they found a horrific scene. 5 members of the Bever family brutally slain. Daniel was wounded but alive, and the youngest, just 2, had miraculously survived. But the real shock came from 13-year-old Crystal, gravely injured. She named the attackers. It was her own brothers, 18-year-old Robert and 16-year-old Michael. Eventually, the 2 were arrested nearby, but what happened next left everyone stunned. Robert and Michael had planned the massacre to make a name for themselves. Craving infamy, they showed no remorse throughout the trial, remaining emotionless as they were sentenced to life behind bars.
Oklahoma law says Michael Bever, who was 16 during his family's murder, is an adult in the eyes of the law.
Now the Bever brothers' quest for infamy was chilling, but Aiden Fucci's case shows that the thirst for notoriety can push even the youngest to commit horrific acts. Number 12. Aiden Fucci. At just 14 years old, Aiden Fucci committed a crime so brutal it left no room for sympathy. His victim was 13-year-old Tristan Bailey, a fellow classmate from Patriot Oaks Academy in Florida. Fucci lured her into the woods and attacked her multiple times with a knife. But what made it even more chilling? Fucci's disturbing reaction after committing the crime. While Tristan's family was searching for her, Fucci was snapping selfies in the back of a cop car, making jokes about the crime. Eventually, the surveillance footage sealed his fate. Aiden was seen walking with Tristan just before the attack and sprinting away from the crime scene minutes later. The autopsy revealed the sheer brutality: 49 defensive wounds, 35 to the head and neck, 29 to the back and shoulders, and 6 fatal injuries. When Fucci pleaded guilty to the crime, the judge made it clear that the right sentence for his crimes would be life in prison.
Because of your age, you are eligible for review of the sentence in 25 years. I order the Department of Corrections to notify you when you are eligible to apply for your review hearing.
There's no doubt Aiden's coldness was chilling. However, Philip Chism's case shows how quickly a moment of madness can turn deadly. Number 11. Philip Chism. It was October 2013 when 14-year-old Chism, a quiet student at Danvers High School in Massachusetts, snapped. Colleen Ritzer, a beloved 24-year-old teacher, was known for her kindness and dedication to helping her students. But when Chism stayed after school for a test review, something inside him shifted. Reports say he grew agitated and started muttering to himself before following Ritzer into the school bathroom, where horror unfolded. First, Chism assaulted her and then went at her with a knife. After the brutal attack, he hid her body in the woods, then, in a chilling move, used her credit card to buy a movie ticket. While authorities were desperately searching for both the teacher and student, Chism was hiding in plain sight. Chism led them to her remains, proving this was no accident, but a calculated crime. Tried as an adult, he was sentenced to life in prison, with parole only possible after 40 years. As the verdict was read, Ritzer's mother wept, but Chism stood there expressionless, completely unremorseful.
Of not less than 40 years.
Philip Chism will serve 40 years in prison before he gets a chance for parole. His mother broke down in tears.
This case may have shaken many people, but James Fairweather's twisted desire for notoriety escalated the horror to an entirely different level. Number 10. James Fairweather. James Fairweather was a 15-year-old with one goal: to get famous, no matter the cost. Colchester was shattered on March 24, 2014, when a man discovered James Atfield's lifeless body. The perpetrator was none other than Fairweather, who was responsible for fatally injuring James with a knife multiple times. Just 3 months later, the same brutal violence struck again. Miss Almania, a 31-year-old student at the University of Essex, was brutally mauled on the Salary Brook Trail footpath. 2 merciless attacks, both traced back to one chilling figure, James Fairweather. The true shock came when the 15-year-old was caught hiding in the bushes after a passing woman spotted him. His chilling confession sent shivers down spines. He claimed the voices had urged him to commit unspeakable acts. In court, he tried to escape justice, claiming mental illness, but his plea was rejected. In the end, a life sentence became his fate.
Some of the voices were talking to me. You need to make a sacrifice, or we're going to come and get you. You need to do it. And I saw him. It was laying on the grass, like that. It was like that. Just fast asleep, where he was drunk. Then he goes, he's the one. Do it. So I went up to him. Can I stand up? No.
This teen may have gone down in history for seeking fame through violence. However, Nehemiah Griego's chilling plan escalated to a massacre that would forever haunt his family and community. Number 9. Nehemiah Griego. Nehemiah Griego had a terrifying plan to eliminate his entire family. Shockingly, they weren't going to be the only victims in his twisted vision. On January 19, 2013, in Albuquerque, Nehemiah Griego quietly entered his family's home while they slept. One by one, Griego ended their lives with the help of a firearm, as each victim had no time to fight back. But the bloodshed didn't stop there. He planned to continue his rampage at a nearby Walmart, but was fortunately intercepted before he could wreak havoc. The confession that followed was chilling. Griego admitted to his crimes with a coldness that stunned everyone around him. While he was originally tried as a juvenile, the court eventually ruled for 3 life sentences. It wasn't after the ruling that Griego's apology for his actions came with a surprising twist. He seemed genuinely remorseful.
For taking our parents and our sins. I wish I could take it back, but reality is that.
Now, as we move on to our next story, the tragic spiral continues. This time, with a different kind of horror born from misplaced trust. Number 8. Dylan Schumacher. When Ashley Smith left her boyfriend, 16-year-old Dylan Schumacher, in charge of her 2 children on March 19, 2013, she trusted him completely. But when she returned to her Springville, New York home, the unthinkable had happened. Her 2-year-old son Austin was severely injured. According to prosecutors, Austin was struck on the head several times by Schumacher. They say he covered the boy's face with a pillow to quiet him. Tragically, little Austin did not survive. In the courtroom, Schumacher attempted to portray himself as an innocent teen. However, his facade crumbled when texts to his mother revealed a chilling truth. He believed his age and appearance could earn him sympathy from the jury. In the end, the judge wasn't moved by Schumacher's tears, and he was sentenced to 25 years to life.
I didn't mean Austin. Ashley, I really didn't. I really think I did that. I didn't mean.
After Schumacher's facade of innocence crumbled in the courtroom, it was clear that not even tears could save him. But as we move on, we meet Damon Kemp, who seemed to play a similar game. Number 7. Damon Kemp. At first, Damon Kemp appeared like a man dragged into court, suffering, maybe even innocent, but the truth was far darker. On December 6, 2018 in Daytona Beach, Florida, police arrived at the Jade Park apartments for a disturbance. That's where Kemp approached them and confessed to taking someone's life. However, as officers prepared to arrest him, Kemp fled in a flash. When cops traced Kemp back to his apartment, they discovered something far worse. 2 19-year-old men, Trey Ingram and Jordan Patton, were lifeless in his apartment alongside a firearm with Kemp's fingerprints. But the horrors didn't end there. When Kemp was arrested, he put on a chilling performance in the courtroom. The criminal tried to play the victim to win sympathy, but the judge wasn't having it.
You believe that there is probable cause.
5 long years later, Kemp finally received his sentence, 3 life sentences. Damon Kemp's desperate attempt to play the victim in court couldn't change his fate, but his case is far from the youngest to shock the world. Number 6. Mary Bell. In 1968, Newcastle, England was about to be rocked by a crime that would defy all expectations of childhood innocence. Mary Bell, just 10 years old, would become the youngest criminal the country had ever seen. On May 11th, Mary and her friend Norma Bell pushed a boy off a 7-foot-high roof, causing a serious head injury. Their youth shielded them, and the case was dismissed with just a warning. But things escalated further in the derelict houses of Scotswood. On May 25, 1968, 11-year-old Martin Brown was found lifeless, and the police were left clueless. Then, on July 31st, tragedy struck again when a second boy was slain. This time, Norma's guilt became unbearable, and she confessed to her parents, who led her to the police, unraveling the chilling truth behind the crimes. Mary was convicted of both crimes and sentenced to life in prison.
Her family broke down during the sentencing. In a shocking twist,
As one of the most shocking cases of juvenile crime, Mary Bell's story stunned the world. But for some, that chilling potential for evil doesn't stop with childhood. Take Austin Myers and Timothy Mosley, for example. Number 5. Austin Myers and Timothy Mosley. Back on January 28, 2014, two high school friends had a plan. Austin Myers and Timothy Mosley, 18-year-olds from Waynesville, Ohio, thought robbing Justin Back's house would be an easy score. Knowing he had a safe with $20,000, they figured they'd get in and out without a hitch. But their plan quickly spiraled out of control. Instead of an empty house, Back was home, and when he let them inside, everything turned violent. A struggle ensued, and in the chaos, Mosley panicked and used a knife to injure Back. A brutal struggle ended with Back losing his life on the kitchen floor. In a desperate attempt to cover their tracks, they wrapped his remains in a blanket and stuffed it in the trunk of his own car, hoping to stage a runaway. But their lies didn't last long. Arrested and facing the consequences, Mosley was sentenced to life in prison, but Myers, who claimed remorse, was sentenced to pay the ultimate price.
No, I've made a horrible mistake. I'm only 19 years old. I think there's a lot of good things I can do with my life.
When childhood games take a dark turn, the consequences can be chilling, and these next two girls found themselves caught in a nightmare of their own making. Number 4. Anissa Weier and Morgan Geyser. Two 12-year-olds, Anissa Weier and Morgan Geyser, lured their friend Peyton Leutner into the woods under the pretense of a game of hide-and-seek. You see, the Slender Man, a fictional internet figure from 2009, had consumed the minds of Anissa Weier and Morgan Geyser. They believed the only way to prove their loyalty was to take a life, and their target was their innocent friend. What followed was horrific. The girls, carrying a knife, pinned Peyton down and inflicted gruesome injuries. Yet, despite the severe wounds, Peyton summoned the strength to crawl to safety, where a passing cyclist found her and called for help. When police found Weier and Geyser walking nearby, they still had the knife they'd used. The trial that followed was nothing short of emotional. Both girls were tried as adults, though their mental states were heavily scrutinized. Weier, sentenced to 25 years in a mental health institution, barely showed a flicker of emotion. Meanwhile, Geyser, sentenced to 40 years in life, appeared lost, her expression often shifting between confusion and blankness.
I just want to let Bella and her family know I'm sorry.
While this case explored the terrifying consequences of a dark obsession, the next shifts to a tragic crime fueled by poor choices and misguided actions. Number 3. Samantha Grigg. On February 15, 2014, Samantha Grigg, an 18-year-old with seemingly innocent intentions, drove Brendan Himes, 16, and Tyrell Brunette, 18, to East Lansing, Michigan. The two boys had set their sights on robbing someone, and Grigg, whether out of complicity or misjudgment, took part in driving them to their victim. But What was supposed to be a simple robbery turned into a devastating loss of life. The victim, 19-year-old Dustin Frolka, never saw it coming. In the courtroom, Dustin's stepmother made it clear that Grigg's role in this crime was unforgivable, bringing the gravity of the situation into full view.
Now we live knowing that on the night of February 15th, 2014, while we were inside our warm houses, Dustin was left to die on the side of the road, and there was nothing we could do to help him.
Now Grigg would spend years in prison, paying the price for the life she helped end. What began as a deadly robbery quickly escalates into a tragedy, but the story doesn't stop there. In Osceola County, Conrad Schaer took violence to a whole new level. Number 2. Conrad Schaer. A wave of violence gripped Osceola County in the summer of 2013. On June 25th, 17-year-old David Guerrero was fatally injured by open gunfire on Central Avenue in Chism. It would later be revealed that the criminal behind the act was Conrad himself. But that was just the beginning. Over the next week, an unknown assailant fired upon several homes. The community lived in constant dread, unsure of where the next attack would come from. Then, on July 3rd, the violence reached its peak when 18-year-old Eric Riptonarin was slain at a home in Point Siena. The mastermind behind the reign of terror was Conrad Schaer, a young man who seemed determined to bring chaos to the county. When Schaer finally stood in court, his head hung low in shame. His half-hearted apology didn't convince anyone, not the judge, and certainly not the families impacted by his actions. The court had no choice but to deliver justice, sentencing Schaer to at least 25 years in prison before even considering his release.
I was 15 at the time. I'm really sorry for the things I've done. And I know I did wrong, and I know my apologies don't mean nothing to you. And I know it ain't gonna change how you feel about me. But I just feel like I need to apologize, and I really am sorry for what I've done. And I know you.
As Conrad Schaer's reign of terror left a community in fear, another story of violence was unfolding in Florida, this time from a shocking betrayal closer to home. Number 1. Gregory Ramos. A quiet afternoon in Florida was shattered by a desperate 911 call. On November 2, 2018, 15-year-old Gregory Ramos sounded frantic. He had just come home from school to find his house ransacked. His mother, 46-year-old Gail Clevenger, was missing. When the detectives finally arrived, though, they quickly saw through the act. His story had holes, his emotions felt rehearsed, and within hours, the truth unraveled. There was no robbery, no masked intruder. The real monster had been inside the house all along. As it turned out, Ramos had ended his own mother's life, Gail Clevenger, after an argument over grades. For 30 agonizing minutes, he squeezed the life out of her without hesitation. Once she was no longer breathing, he drove to a church and buried her under a fire pit. Realizing her sudden disappearance would raise questions, he staged a fake break-in, trashing the house to throw off investigators. It didn't work, of course. Under pressure, Ramos eventually confessed in the most nonchalant way possible.
There are so many conversations that I want to have with her, but now cannot. I'll never be able to ask her how she met my father or what happened to her in New York. Because of my actions, I will never get to truly know my mom. Not only have I stolen my mother from myself, but from everybody else as well.
In the end, he had stolen his mother's life and destroyed his own.